Hello, and thank you for joining us for another one of our webinar series. Today is part 2 of Who is Really Privileged. We hope you had a chance to join us in our previous presentation in part 1, where if you did get a chance to join it, where Monica went through on how to identify who is really privileged in your organization and how to identify additional risks within your access to different applications or processes. Today, we're going to primarily focus on how to issue these different types of authenticators, whether their users are privileged or non-privileged, how to securely issue certificates to your devices and to your additional on-prem applications, or whether they're in the cloud. So let's dive into part 2. A little bit about us and our background. So Axiad IDS was formed back in 2010 with the main focus on trying to make every digital transaction trustworthy and giving the users the freedom to access their data from any place and from anywhere and to do that securely, thus making the authentication process secure and frictionless to the end users, and making the management of this and making the management of the overall process and different back-end processes as simple as possible. We have a strong track record of delivering these solutions, whether they're cloud, on-premise, or hybrid. And most importantly, we really see our role as a trusted advisor to the organization that selects our solutions, because we truly believe it's a partnership and we'd like to go down this endeavor together. A little bit about the problem. If you've joined part 1, this is a quick recap. If you haven't had a chance to join part 1, or if you've missed it, please go to our website at axiadids.com, and then if you go under newsroom and then under over in that area, you can find all the different webinar series that we have, and you can sign up for part 1 or any other webinar that you're interested in. For today, kind of a quick recap. Really what we looked at in part 1 was that we understand, and I'm sure a lot of you on this call as well, understand that passwords are no longer the answer. No matter how much we try to make passwords the answer by making passwords more complex, making them longer, also changing passwords, whether it's 30, 60, or 90 days, the risks are still there. It generates new risks. Some of the new risks that it generates is now users start to write their passwords down or start using their passwords different across different applications, and sometimes that creates errors in diagnosing what is the key risk that we're really having. Also with passwords and making them more complex and making them change more frequently, it increases the password reset cost. Whether that's from buying solution to do password reset, or whether it's taking time from help desk and assisting users in changing their password, and all the loss of productivity that happens when these big mass password changes are forced or happen. So we will talk about passwords and about authentication, but it's not only solving the authentication problem and replacing passwords. We hope that we show you today that our solution could go beyond that in ensuring that the confidentiality of the data and its integrity and its security, whether at risk or in transit, is also met. And last but not least, it's also important from an audit perspective to be able to say this is where the data was, this is how it transitioned, this is where it was secured, and so all this data becomes extremely important when we're talking in an audit case or in a forensic case. And as methods of attacks are continuously evolving, it's important to have solutions that secure the broader set of your use cases and not just focused on what was traditionally thought as privileged users, which is just your administrators, but now it's really about privileged access, which is all your users within the organization that have access to privileged data. And then we also, as you saw in part 1, it's important to look at your circle of trust and now secure the authentication or transaction from everyone within your circle of trust. A little bit of an overview on our solution before I go through the demo and show you the end user experience. As I had mentioned a couple of slides ago, that our solution can be deployed on-prem in the cloud. From a user perspective, end user experience is pretty the same. But from the cloud, the reason why I kind of wanted to show you the simplicity of our cloud platform and how easy it is to deploy and manage. We've built it based on a virtual private cloud. That means each entity has its own bubble. So there's no commingling of data, no sharing any other backend data. It's not a multi-tenant. It's a dedicated environment for you, and that means it can be viewed as an extension of your data center. And therefore, you kind of have the best of both worlds, moving to a cloud solution without inheriting the additional risks of moving to a cloud solution. What's in that virtual private cloud that we provide? So you have your dedicated keys in an HSM. These keys are only used for you to secure your whole project here. You have a dedicated root and issuing CA so that you can issue your certificates for users, for devices, whatever you need internally from your PKI needs. And then you have an authentication service that would allow you to accept authentication from your push notification, from your mobile phone, or from a software token, or from a hardware token or an OTP token. And we have our device and credential management that will allow you to manage the full life cycle of certificates on hardware devices such as YubiKey tokens, smart cards, USB tokens, whatever your decision is on how to securely store your certificates, and of course our mobile credential management as well. With the certificates, we also have options for public CA. For example, if you wanted to send emails that are publicly signed and encrypted, so we can do that. And if you have extensive certificates needs, for example, we can cross-certify with the Federal Bridge or Safe Biopharma, so that when you're exchanging email security, they can validate exactly through the bridge that you're connecting through. So that's from a high level from our cloud. Although this might look, there's a lot of items here, but it's completely automated and full turnkey. All we need is some basic info, naming conventions, some aspects on how you want to configure some of the items. It's kind of like a one-pager. Once we have that, within 42 minutes, the cloud instance is ready to go and for you to use. So now that we have the cloud turned on and now you can use it, let's look at how that affects the user experience on day-to-day. So if we look at the top right here on the gray box, you can see this is the different authentication methods that the user can use. And this is just a small subset. Here we're showing a smart card, YubiKey, or mobile phone or hardware token. We can also send the OTP via SMS or email, or we have a variety of other methods. But here basically now the user, depending on which application they're trying to access, they have different authenticators to securely log into these different applications. From your internal infrastructure, we don't need to install any additional software. All we need is a simple web browser extension, and then from there, users can authenticate to the self-service portal, issue themselves their own device, and manage its lifecycle. And then depending on your internal policies and configuration, they can access different applications securely with the appropriate method of authentication. So if we recap now, if we go to here to the bottom left corner, now users can go, as I had just mentioned, they can authenticate to that self-service portal and do a magnitude of things here. We'll walk you through that in the demo and show what are the options available to the user. Once they have that token in hand, now there's a variety of use cases. For example, for privileged users, they can do PKI-based authentication to their different OS, whether it's Windows, Linux, Mac, and in online, offline. They could do digital signature encryption and log in using PKI to PKI-enabled portals. Also, for privileged users through products like CyberArk, Wallix, or others, now they can authenticate securely using that PKI-based authentication to secure all your applications. And of course, your standard use cases of authenticating to the VPN, whether it's through a soft token, a hard token, or mobile token, all these options are available through the VPN. Very high-level subset. We're happy to get onto a more in-depth demo if you need. Please feel free to contact us, and we can walk you through all the different scenarios and applications that we support. Wanted to walk you through the demo, and this is going to be from the user's perspective. It's important that the user experience is as frictionless as possible. If it becomes complex, then it makes it harder for the user to issue and manage their own token. What do I mean by that? In traditional projects that we've seen, you have different solutions that are not all integrated from a back-end perspective. So the user has to go to one solution to issue their mobile device, they go to another one to issue their YubiKey, they go to another one to issue their smart card, and maybe to a third one to issue their hardware token. So because of that, now we're asking the user to have a different type of experience and know where to manage each token in separate locations. So if we look here at our unified portal, and let's look at the user experience, how they interact with it. So here, we're going to log into the system, and we're going to log in as, for example, here as Jessica. She's logging in for the first time, and as you can see, she doesn't have any token attached to her at this point in time, or any token assigned to her. And here you can see from a single pane of glass, now she's able to simply add a hardware connected token, a mobile token, or a hardware OTP token, really easy from the same location. Let's focus first in the case of privileged. So here now I'm going to issue to myself, so Jessica is going to issue herself a PKI-based token from the portal. So what does she need to know? Actually, not much. Pretty simple. It's kind of a plug-and-play process where all you have to do is insert the token. In this case, it's a YubiKey. Once the token is inserted, the portal automatically detects it and read it. And the only thing here she needs to do is just select the PIN. The PIN is to make sure that it's something that you know and something that you have. So the hardware token with PKI certificates is something that you have, and the PIN is something that you know. Here, from a PIN policy perspective, the administrator can set the PIN policy, and now all she has to do is enter a PIN that matches that policy. Once the PIN matches that policy, she can click Next, and then behind the scenes, a lot of things are happening. Here, for example, we're talking about YubiKey, and it's asking her to tap the YubiKey device. That's for the U2F process. So behind the scenes here, what's happening is we're issuing an authentication certificate, a signature cert, and an encryption cert to the token, and we're also enabling the one-time password aspect of the YubiKey and the FIDO U2F, all in a single click. And the user really doesn't need to know here all the complexity that's happening behind the scene. So if you look here, now Jessica has a YubiKey 4, or it could be a YubiKey 5, and in that token she has a certificate configured, her one-time password has been also assigned, and the FIDO U2F has been assigned as well. And you can see here, this is the serial number of the device, and active, that's the status of the device that she has right now. And of course, she can click on the little tab here, and she can see details. She can change her PIN or disable the token in case it's lost, damaged, or stolen. And here, if we click on details, you can see all the details of the certificate. And as I had just mentioned, there's 3 certificates on this device for different aspects. So now that Jessica has issued her hardware token or YubiKey, now if she wanted to have a mobile wallet, so all she has to do here is to go to the Google Play Store, or go to the Apple Store, and download our Axiad ID mobile wallet from that store. Once she has that downloaded on her mobile device, it's a very simple process. Again, she clicks Next, she selects a PIN. It could be the same PIN as for her hardware device as well. So now once she selects the PIN, click Next, all it's going to ask her to do is to open the mobile app, and then just to read the barcode on the mobile app, and the app will be automatically assigned to Jessica. And now, by the end of just these two simple tasks, now Jessica has 2 tokens assigned to her. She has her mobile device for push notification and for offline logon, and she has her YubiKey that's been enabled for certificate-based authentication, one-time password, and FIDO, all in that simple click. So as you can see here, the user experience is really simple to create the different type of authenticators for the user. Now let's look at some different use cases. So I have my token and I have my mobile, and now we're going to look at some how do I interact with systems now that I have these different authenticators. First, let's look at Jessica wants to go, and this is a low-risk operation. So here she wants to authenticate to internally into the intranet, and the application here is going to ask her for to authenticate. In this specific demo, in this context, we're using ADFS as the IDP. So now typically Jessica, what she normally does is she just goes ahead and just enters her AD credentials, and that normally would authenticate her. But now, because she has our mobile wallet and our push notification has been configured by her administrator, from a process perspective, it's the same process for Jessica. She enters her credentials, and after she enters her credentials and click to sign in, now the difference is she has an option. She could use our mobile, or she can, if she has a hardware token, she can just enter the value that's on the screen here. Here for the demo, Jessica is clicking to use her mobile push notification, which is our Axiad ID wallet. And as she clicks here, a notification automatically comes to her mobile device, ask her, do you want to authenticate? Once she clicks on that notification and the notification opens, she can see here there's some information that notifies Jessica that this is coming from the ADFS application. This is the location where it's coming from and the username. So if she did not initiate this exact transaction, she can deny it. So if somebody is trying to hack her account, or even if somebody had the actual, was able to get her AD credentials, they still won't be able to authenticate because Jessica can deny the request and they won't be able to authenticate. Once Jessica clicks on the approve button and then the transaction goes through, there's still one last step, is to prove, again, something that you have and something that you are or something that you know. In this case, we're going to ask for Touch ID, Face ID is also supported, or fingerprint on Android device. In this case, it's an iOS phone enabled with Touch ID. So once she provides our fingerprint, then she's successfully authenticated to that application. So as you can see, it's a pretty frictionless experience and it's pretty simple. Jessica doesn't need to know anything new or anything different. And now any application that is secured by ADFS or by, let's say, Ping Identity or by another third-party provider, now you can authenticate securely to that federation and enable push notification to it. Now let's go through another example. Here is more of a medium risk. So now Peter has access to different applications. For example, as his role in HR, he has access to pretty important and critical information within the organization. So let's look at how Peter can leverage his hardware-based token. In this case, it's the YubiKey that he had issued for himself recently. In this context, now he's trying to access his Windows box, and typically he would enter his AD credentials. But now that he has his YubiKey issued and all he needs to know is his PIN, there's no need for the Windows credentials anymore. So let's look how his process is. So he injects the YubiKey in to the USB port. He clicks on the authentication. Once he clicks on to authenticate on the smart card option, Windows natively and automatically reads the certificate that's on the YubiKey and knows that this is Peter's YubiKey. Now all he's asked to do is enter the 6 to 8 digit PIN that he had configured for himself. Once he enters that, He's automatically, and PKI-based authentication is happening behind the scene, and Peter is securely authenticated into his system. It's the same user experience he would have if he was authenticating to his Mac or to his Linux box. Instead of the credentials, he would just insert his YubiKey and then just enter his PIN, and he's authenticated. Also, if you have single sign-on enabled, what you can do now is enable your single sign-on. In this example, we're showing Evidian, but now Evidian, as Evidian is becoming the password manager and it's storing all these different passwords, it's important to have strong authentication to these applications. So here, the timesheet has been enabled with single sign-on, and now we're going to show that as the user is authenticating, it's also leveraging the PKI to here. So let's look at this exact example. This is a web application. Here, traditionally, when the user would be authenticating, they would just enter their credentials to that application. In this context now, we're going to do PKI authentication, is going to read the smart card, and this application is PKI enabled, and now the user is securely authenticated through the SSO to this application. So that's why it's important, not only if you have a password, an SSO engine internally, or if you have a SAML provider, authenticating securely to these applications become even more critical, because if a hacker can access this application, now they have access to all the different apps that the user has. So enabling strong authentication to these SSO engines, it becomes more critical. Now let's look at another use case. In this use case now, Alice is going to, and this is a high risk, is going to authenticate to different activities, for example, through a password vault or more of a PAM solution, privileged access management. So traditionally, it's only these applications are only password enabled. So here, for an example, we're going to look at Wallets, and rather we're just authenticating to check out a password or to log in into a specific application. Now we're going to log in securely, leveraging our PKI token. So how would that work? It's actually pretty simple. As you just saw, all the user had to do, instead of entering their credential, they just had to click, Alice had to click on login with X509 certificate. Once she clicks on login, her certificate it shows here because she has more than one certificate. She has a privileged user and she has a regular user. So here the PAM has been enabled for privilege access only. So she has to use her privilege token or her privilege certificate. Once she clicks on that and clicks OK, we still need proof of possession, something that you know and something that you have. And in this case, the something that you know is the PIN. She enters her PIN, and now she's securely and successfully authenticated into the application. And now when she's in the application, she can go into different sessions and log in. But even your different sessions, it's important to protect them. For example, here, Alice now is going to authenticate to through an RDP session. And now we can also enable your RDP or VDI to also accept X509 or certificate-based authentication. So here we're going to start an RDP session. And as we're starting the RDP session, we can also log in with your certificate-based auth to the server. And you can see here, get the list of certificates. And we're going to look at that little list, and you can see which authentication cert was used to authenticate to the machine. Now, not only accessing that specific application, but you can also, from a recording perspective, you have now a lot more information. So here you can see it was used, the privilege access was used. So here is an SSH session, and we're also going to use our certificate-based auth to authenticate, and that will allow us to authenticate securely even through SSH sessions and not just through Windows auth. And here's what I really quickly high-level touched on session monitoring. So now if we go back and look at the session monitoring, now we can look at all the different commands that were used. We can even see which authentication was used, which is really important. So now we're securing the password vault not with a higher level of MFA. And here is just a kind of a quick overview on what was done during that session for the session recording and monitoring. And you can see here all the logs of what was done during that session. So we got a chance to kind of quickly show you some of the use cases, but that is a very high level or very limited number of use cases that we wanted to demo today just because of time. But if we had to summarize, so what our platform allows you to do is to enroll the users in specific use cases. When we talk about Federal Bridge or Safe Biopharma, we can help you with identity proofing, but then more importantly, the credentialing, walking the user to be able to, simply as I had demoed just a little bit ago, that depending on whichever type of token you have, whether it's hardware-based, software-based, or mobile-based, how with one click you can easily assign yourself your token, and then the vast amount of authentication that you can do with X509 or OTP, act as the bridge to IAM, like Microsoft ADFS or Ping or ForgeRock or others. And last but not least, the whole credential and lifecycle management of that device, whether it's lost, damaged, stolen, replacement. So that's where our cloud does, and it enables, or if it's on-prem, so it enables the user to use whichever type of authenticator to authenticate securely to all the different applications. We talked a lot about the user, but also wanted to mention that now that we've secured the user communication, it's also important to secure your device and machine authentication. So again, our cloud can simply, because you have a dedicated root in issuing CA, and it's a full-fledged CA, so now we can issue certificates automatically through our SCEP protocol or our automatic enrollment proxy, AEP, and now we can issue automatically as soon as, for example, as soon as a laptop or a device joins a domain, we can automatically issue them a certificate, and we can also issue certificates to any device that accepts an X509 certificate within your environment. So now we have the users have multi-factor, the devices have the certificates so that they can identify themselves when they're joining the network. And now you can authenticate to all these different applications, whether they're on-prem or in the cloud, or whether they're single sign-on or through a PAM like Wallix or CyberArk. And of course, because we're securing access to the IAM as well, now you have a more holistic view on doing all the different authentications for the different needs. And of course, as I had mentioned during the demo, we're also issuing signature and encryption certificates. So now you can do secure email, for example. You can also do secure transaction. You can encrypt your disk for pre-boot, and there's a lot of different use cases. As I had mentioned, please feel free to reach out to us, and we can walk you through a more in-depth demo, or also look at the use cases that you may have, so we can address them as well. That's all I had for today. Again, if you didn't get a chance to join part one, that goes through a lot of the items that I was discussing today on who is privileged and non-privileged and enterprise IoT, please feel free to go to our website, as I mentioned, into our events page and sign up for part one. I know we're doing another one pretty shortly, and we look forward to seeing you there. Wanted to thank you for your time today. If you have any additional questions, please feel free to email me, or you can also email our marketing team at any time. And we hope to see you in one of our future webinars. Thank you for joining, and have a great day.